Okay, well, good morning. I'm Larry, and I'm a superintendent. I want to welcome everyone here. We are having our coffee with Larry to start off the school year, and let's go around to folks that work for the district. Frank, would you start with just kind of our role in the district, share with folks, and introduce yourself, please. So, Frank, want to start us off?
Frank Underwood, Director of Facilities. Good morning.
Shelby Scarborough. Donna Bearhurst, Senior Information, Planning and Assessment.
Gary Versois, Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education.
Lori Ross, Assistant Superintendent, Elementary.
Brenda Hatfield, Director of Quality.
Ken, welcome to the board.
Yeah, board, yeah.
Dana Bear, Director of Nutrition Services. Brittany Roos, Communications and Marketing.
Jason Hoffman, Chief Operating Officer, Chief Financial Officer.
Brad Senior, Director of Health Services.
Stephanie Samuel, Executive Assistant to Dr. Wilson. Gabriel Whitmer, Director of Performing Arts Center.
Okay. Well, I'm Larry. I'm our superintendent. I'd like to welcome everyone here. It is just wearing a mask. It's different, but we are practicing social distancing, and life goes on. So that's why we're having this. We could have done this virtually, but we are in school face-to-face, having our students come to school. So we're going to have coffee with Larry face-to-face as well, and practice appropriate social distancing and wearing a mask. And Chad Studer's going to go into a little bit more detail about our reentry plans and what we're doing and how we're able to be in school. First off, we're just super excited to be able to be in school. That is not the norm across the state, and we feel blessed to be able to do that. And that would not be possible if it wasn't for our staff and our teachers working together, ensuring we can do that for a safe environment for our students, for our staff, that learning can take place. Because we firmly believe that learning is a lot more, it's possible with fidelity when you're face-to-face. I remember taking a correspondence course in college. I didn't get along very well. And I wasn't disciplined enough to be able to do that, but there's just something about being able to have a conversation with someone face-to-face, and the same in our classrooms as well. So thank you to our folks that are here and our teachers across the district for everything that you are doing to ensure that we can be in school and provide that safe learning environment for us. We are, whether at home or whether at school, we need to ensure we have, the numbers fluctuate a little bit, and Don could correct me if I'm wrong, between 14 and 1,500 kids that have chosen to learn virtually, and we respect that. And so we've given our families a choice, and that is something that we're working through. There's a learning curve with that as well, but we're working through that. Our enrollment this year as a district is up about 100 kids. I think it's 96 compared to a year ago. So we've been sharing, this is my 6th year here, that as a school district, we're not growing like crazy, but we have steady growth. And so we're up about 96 kids this year compared to the same time last year. So as we go forward, we have more opportunities with our families, and we want to ensure learning. We're going to engage our families, and then we're going to continue to work on developing our staff at the end of the day to give all of our students hope for a better tomorrow and ensure that they graduate. We want to make sure that they can read, and all those things together to become the premier school district in the state. So that's kind of a quick overview. We'll have plenty of question Q&A here at the end. I asked Shelby, Dr. Shelby Scarborough, she is our Chief of Learning, to come just kind of give a quick overview of learning in the COVID environment. We've talked about in chat, I'll get into some of the reentry plans, but it is different. I remember the first guy at Menards that had a mask on, and he was not articulating very well with his mask on, and I was like, trying to lean forward, and he was getting irritated that I couldn't understand him. So there was a plexiglass, he had a mask on, and he was kind of mumbling. So that made it challenging. And so that's a challenge that our staff and our students face, but trying to be clear about when to wear a mask, when do we not wear a mask. Right now, I don't have a mask, but I'm more than 6 feet. I was at a ball game last night, and a gentleman came up and sat right beside me, a guy that I know pretty well, and he didn't have a mask on, and I didn't, so I put mine on, and he was there about 10 minutes. We had a conversation, and after about 10 minutes, I said, we got about 2 or 3 more minutes here, and out of all due respect, we need to space out. And so, it was a little bit uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, we have to do what we have to do and be willing to, hey, no offense, but I gotta make sure that, we do everything we can, to ensure a safe environment and everything we can to try to mitigate as much as possible, any spread of anything or, anything that might impact that. So, Dr. Scarborough, will you come up and give a quick overview of learning in the COVID environment, please?
Good morning. I think the word resiliency is what comes to mind when we talk about the first 2 weeks of school, because when you walk through the halls of the classrooms and look at the different methods that teachers are using to instruct kids to make sure the learning environment is as close to what it has been before COVID. When you see plexiglass dividers and the kids have decorated them and put their names on them, they're still excited about learning despite all of the other measures that we've put in place. One of the things that I think is really important is all of the efforts our teachers and administrators did in the preparation for the start of the school year and focusing on procedures. So everybody knows we're going to change traffic patterns. Recess is going to look different. We're going to eat in the classroom. We're going to clean up after ourselves. We're going to separate ourselves from each other. One of the days I was at recess and there was this little girl that was just standing there staring across the playground. Well, what are you doing? She was with my friends in the other cohort. And so when you hear little kids talking about working in cohorts, she was just watching her friend from afar, but they understand. And I think that by them embracing the environment we've created for them, learning is still going to take place. As Larry mentioned, we've been trying to operate virtual programming in our district that is as big, if not bigger, than some of our surrounding districts. So in essence, we're doing in-seat and then trying to operate what virtual looks like. There have certainly been challenges, and people have been working a large number of hours trying to make this successful, but we are having learning take place in our classroom, and I think I can confidently stand in front of you and say that people are excited to be in school and they're willing to do whatever it takes to stay in school and to make sure our kids are enjoying learning and learning as we go. So we couldn't do it with all these people sitting in here, and I know starting March 17th when we started talking about closure, we also had to start talking about reentry. So a lot of time and energy and effort has gone into planning the start of the school year, and so we made it for 2 weeks, and we're really proud about that.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Chad. So Chad Suter will kind of give an overview of our reentry plans. I will bring here our website. These are accessible for all our reentry plans here on our district website. I believe down here at the bottom, is that right? Back to school reentry plans. So for our patrons, our parents, if you have not seen or are not aware of them, they are on our district website, and encourage you to take a look. If you have any questions, please reach out and we'll try to work through that. And Chad, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. So everyone knows, and I get teased about it, that when it comes to COVID, I can talk for a long time. And so today I've been given a time limit, so I'm going to touch on some high points. And what I wanted to reiterate is what Larry was talking about is our reentry plan is on our homepage. If you scroll down to the bottom, you can find that if you have not had a chance to review that yet. And once you click on that link, the very top link is our reentry plan. And then whenever you click onto the reentry plan, it will come up with an infographic like this. It has everything lined out as far as the district for reentry. Now, what I can tell you, the reentry plan is not to keep COVID out of the schools. Okay, the reentry plan is to help mitigate the risk when COVID is in the schools. And I can tell you from firsthand knowledge this week that we've had a few schools that have had positive cases, and because our teachers, our staff, our students are following the reentry plan, we were able to mitigate that risk with very minimal, if not any, students or teachers quarantined because they were following protocols. So I myself are the one doing the contact tracing. And so when I go in there and I see classrooms, some of them set up 6-7 feet apart, and desks, teachers wearing masks, students wearing masks, it's a great feeling to know that when we're not there watching, they're still doing what they're supposed to, and that helps mitigate risk. Like I said, right now we've got other illnesses coming about. I'm starting to see adenovirus, which is a common cold right now. I'm also starting to see gastroenteritis, which is the stomach bug. And we had our first flu B positive at JC on Monday. Okay, so we have other illnesses that we're dealing with as well in the district. But our reentry plan, with all of our layers of protection that we have, helps mitigate that, keep our kids in school, keep our staff safe, and help us be successful. So there's lots more to this reentry plan, and I promised I wouldn't read into all of it, because like I said, I'll be up here for hours, so we don't have that time. But if there are questions, anyone can reach out to me. You will always get an answer from me, but I'll be more than happy to help answer any questions after that. Any questions from the group here?
Chad, would you just, so I think one of the most common questions, I heard somebody's got, what happens when we're made aware that somebody has a positive case, or they were with a friend who said they had it? How do we determine and differentiate whether you have it, whether you do not, whether being quarantined? Would you kind of give an overview of that? I know that's probably one of the most common questions that I hear.
So I cannot give a black and white answer to that because every case is situational. And what that means is there's what's called contact tracing and contact investigation. The tracing is what I do. Tracing inside the district. So what I do is I gather information. I contact the teacher, I contact the students, I contact parents, and I put all this information together. And then from that, I make a preliminary decision on what should be done moving forward. I then take all of this information and I send it to the health department of that county, whether it be Callaway, whether it be Cole, Miller, wherever it's at. I send that information and I talk to them and say, here's my recommendation. Do you have any concerns or any changes to my recommendation? If not, I'm going to execute it. And that's how we come up with who is quarantined and who isn't. So if you are a contact of a positive case, and you've been within 6 feet of someone for longer than 15 minutes, even with a mask, you are still going to be considered a close contact, and you will possibly be quarantined. Will you always be? No, I can't promise that. It just depends on when we get down into the tracing and start the investigation, we might see that, okay, really you weren't, you just thought you were. And then you also have the contacts of the contact, which we get a lot of. And what that means is Larry is positive. Larry and I had lunch together, and so now I am a contact to Larry. All of you hung out with me, and you all are still safe from me because you are the contact of contact. I am not symptomatic at this time. I'm not showing symptoms. However, if I develop symptoms, that's a new situation. But the current situation of Larry being positive, I was your buffer to keep you all safe. Okay, so that's how we determine if someone is quarantined or not. I do know that we had a recent situation where we had 9 people named as possible contacts from a teacher. However, once we started the tracing, and then I actually did an investigation with it just because I wanted to make sure everyone was safe. Whenever we did the investigation, out of those 9, we actually only found 1 that was truly a contact. Okay, so just because you're named as a contact doesn't mean that, automatically 14 days, 2 weeks off. Unless you need a vacation, let me know and I'll put you on the list. So, but other than that, there's a lot of people asking for a black and white answer, and I can't give you that because every situation is going to be different. But what I can tell you is the process, the questions, the investigation, the tracing, everything is the exact same for every situation, but the results are going to be different. Does that help break that down a little bit? Okay. Any other questions that we think of that I maybe missed?
Yeah, I was just to mention, I talked to counterpart, another board member that I know from the KC metro area. I've heard you talk about the good relationship, the good communication between you and our county and local health department officials. And I was just reminded in talking to him how fortunate we are and how much we communicate to them, how much we appreciate that, because he was sharing some of the nightmare experience they're having in the KC metro area where you've got multiple districts butting right up to each other, multiple jurisdictions, different policies and guidelines, and different challenges with communication, changing the rules, and he was just talking about how it was, I just getting away from that conversation, being very grateful to hear you talk about how that relationship has been so collaborative and positive.
Thank you.
It's not true in all areas.
Well, thank you for that, and I appreciate it because it's a big deal for us. It's not just a job. To me, I enjoy coming to work every day. My job is to keep our students and our staff safe. And so by developing those relationships, it only benefits the district. And I have direct access to a tracer at not all the health departments. I'm not going to lie and say, yeah, we have great relationships with all, but Callaway and Cole are where our schools are. So that's my highest priority for now. As far as staff, of course, we're spread out everywhere. But I agree with you 100%. I've got cell phones, I've got email. I have direct access to where I can access someone at any time if I need to. So it is a great resource, and I agree with you. We're more fortunate than some of the bigger surrounding areas that don't have that. So it definitely helps us. All right. Well, thank you for letting me talk. I appreciate that.
Chad, thank you.
Yes.
If there was ever a time, we don't have a new slogan this year of being stronger together. We're trying to make that a reality, and this is my 6th year here, and if there was ever a time of being stronger together for all of us, it's the outcomes of working together, working through these. It's not that we won't have speed bumps, we will. We will have challenges, barriers, but we have to work through those. And thank you, Chad, for all your work on that, and everybody, honestly. So, Jason Hoffman is our CFO, COO, and I asked him to kind of give an overview of, as we come back to school, feeding our kids, make sure they get to school in a safe manner. So, Jason, if you give an overview, and whether Dana or Frank touch in, however. So, thank you, Jason.
Sure. So I'll start with our food service. That's our area of biggest change. If you think that we've delivered food to our students probably the same way for the last 100 years. Kids have a lunch period, they leave the classroom, they go to the cafeteria, they get in a line, they go through the line, they get their food, they sit together, all bunched together in a cafeteria, and then they go their merry way. Well, that wasn't an option for us this year. So we had to completely rethink how are we going to deliver food. And so our food service team has done a great job. We're now delivering food in wings and in the hallways. Kids are eating in their classrooms. I heard super positive feedback from an elementary school about how eating in the classrooms has been great, because when kids, you get a whole grade level in a cafeteria and they start talking, just a few voices, the noise level gets really loud in a big room. Where now when they're in their classrooms, it's a time for them to relax and to visit with their friends, and the noise level with 15 kids in the classroom, it doesn't get very high. So I heard very positive things about the experience, which was a little bit of a surprise. I heard one building say they don't think they'll go back to go into the cafeteria.
Jason, my 10-year-old grandson said the bonus of COVID was they get to watch TV while during lunch. Yeah, he was like, we didn't get to do that before. So
Right.
He thought that was great.
So it's been a learning experience too on the food that we can get, because we have to pre-package it for them. They're not going through and say, I want this, this, and this. We have to pre-package it. And so early on we were very limited, just trying to work through it. So we're continuing to add more and more options, and I think it's just going to get better from here. As far as transportation, we do have, as of the first day of school, we had 26% fewer students riding our buses. Part of that is we have 18% doing virtual, and then we've encouraged parents to bring your students to school if you can. So we have the same number of buses now with 25% fewer riders, that has fewer kids on each bus. We bought a new software for contact tracing. It's a scan on when a student gets on the bus, they scan on the bus, and then they scan off the bus. So if we have a case, we can immediately go pull the roster. Did the student ride the bus this day, what day did they do it? Then get the seating chart and say, all right, who did they sit by? So it helped with contact tracing, but it's also getting us immediate data. We used to have to rely on the bus drivers to give us a count of how many kids rode the bus, and Frank was able to run me a report on Wednesday of how many students rode each bus. And so it was nice that the most students we had on any one bus was 41 students, and the average was 20 on all of our regular route buses. So that's been good to give spacing. One challenge, for sure, it has brought us, we've encouraged parents to bring their students to school, so it means longer lines for parent drop-off, so that's a challenge we're trying to work through. But so far, I think it's been a great start. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Jason. So, just like Jason said there, the more parents taking their children to school, so then lines. Okay, so there's more lines, and that's how I hear about it. Different schools, probably the most common is at Thomas Jefferson, Lawson, the bottleneck at Edgewood, and Truman Boulevard. So anyway, as we work through that, and we have some plans to address that to help for the long term as well, and what that looks like. So a lot of different parts to all of this, and it is I've had a lot of folks say, can't we just go back to the normal, the new normal, the next normal? We've learned a lot of things, I think, through the closures and how we can better educate our children, whether there's no COVID, whether there is COVID, just best practices and connecting with folks and helping our folks to think outside the box, our parents to think outside the box. The importance of it starting at home with our parents and guardians. And I've heard from a lot of parents that through the closure of, boy, I'm sure I didn't appreciate my teachers enough, or my children's teachers. So it's good for all of us to have empathy, put ourselves in other folks' shoes, and in, not just in education, but in life in general. So I think that's something that all of us, as we work together, stronger together, going forward, is an important part for all of us. Wanted to talk just a little bit about equity. So we had shared as a school district that one of our goals was that our staff would better reflect our student population. And we're making progress there. We've had some listening sessions, a lot of meetings. We're actually getting ready to start with both of our high schools, Capital City High School and Jeff City High School, of students of color focus group. And we're having 8 to 10 students of color at both of those schools, and I'm meeting with them. And we're going to ask them their perspective, help us to understand how we can ensure an inclusive learning environment for all of our children and our staff. So we are super excited about that. We're meeting in October, I think October 1st and October 8th. We're meeting with both those schools, and we'll report back with that. I've had a lot of conversations just of how can we work stronger together. And that means different things to different folks, and from the perspective that we have, and helping us to better understand what that looks like. And I know we have an opportunity here. So we see this as an opportunity to grow, work through as difficult or as challenging as they may be at times, because that perspective that we all have is different going forward. So just kind of wanted to touch on that going forward. Facility-wise, okay, so we had talked about a year ago that we were out of space K through 8. And that we had overcrowding in our K through 8 schools. In 2017, when we ran J+C, I watched again on KOMU. They'd interviewed me after the passing that evening and said, what are you going to do about the K through 8 spacing? And I shared that that's something we're going to look at 4 to 5 years down the road. Well, here we are. That was in 2017. And we considered last fall, winter, spring to address K through 8 with 2, 5, 6 buildings, and we're still exploring that to address that. We're looking at some other options, and we're going to report back. We're going to have give our community an opportunity. I'm going to host some town halls, at least one, and ask for some feedback on some ideas that we have as we're vetting through that. So it is a challenge with COVID-19, with the different elements, but life still goes on, and we still have more kids than we did last year, and we were overcrowded last year. And as we go forward, we want to ensure a learning environment that's conducive for all students to be successful, and so we're working through that. We do have, of our 15, so we have 11 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, 2 high schools. Of those 15, 10 of the 15 have trailers at those schools. And you can learn in trailers, but that's not our long-term solution that we believe to become a premier school district. So, of our 7 of the 11 elementary schools have trailers, both are middle schools, and then still at JC High School, one of the 2 we do now at Capital City. So, we're working through that. We still have phase 2 athletic facilities. So we, throughout the campaign of J+C that I referenced earlier, we had shared that practice facilities would be the athletic fields at Capital City, or we didn't know the name at the time, they would have practice facilities. Well, folks forget that. Don't forget we have practice facilities that Capital City and Jefferson City will use the same competition facilities until we can then provide at a later date. So we're making those plans for what that look like at a later date. We want to ensure that all of our students have an opportunity to excel, regardless of what school you attend. I know we've shared throughout at JC, Capital City, not having the haves and the have-nots. And as we've talked about before, Jason is facilitating a tremendous job of the properties, which we were, property owners reached out to us as a school district next to the football stadium at Jefferson City if we had any interest in purchasing. So we have some long-term plans of what that might look like. Again, the root being we want to provide all students the same opportunities whether you go to JC or Capital City. So we're working through that. We'll be communicating here this fall on what that looks like as we consider options to address that K-8 spacing needs in phase 2 of the athletic facilities. So that's kind of an overview as we started off the school year, and this is my 13th year as superintendent, 26th year in education, unlike any other. And but that's, you never have to worry about any boredom of being the same old, because it's not. Every day is new, and again, that's an opportunity that we have. And I just thank you guys, one, for coming and for what you do and everyone's role. Ken, thank you for being here as a board member. We have to be in sync, all of us, rowing in the same direction. And even when we have differing views on things, but how do we collectively work stronger together? So I appreciate everybody on those things. Any questions for any of you today? Anybody else? Any questions? Welcome. Any questions that you'd like to touch on? Anything we've touched on, or anything else as far as just Q&A here out of anything at all? Sure.
Question about your diversity, the few words that you said about that.
Yes.
Some events that are coming up in October.
Okay.
You said you were going to be talking to students.
Yes.
Are there any other sources of information that you plan to utilize as far as maybe diversity trainers or any type of maybe outside organization that might have some other insights other than what children are thinking?
Right. We do have an equity council. We're meeting this fall. We've been meeting for about a year and 18 months, maybe 20 months now. We're going to be meeting this fall. We're meeting once a quarter. The COVID kind of threw a curveball on that, but giving updates with that. I'm actually attending a workshop. We did attend here, what was the date? August, what, the Inclusivity Conference in Columbia. We attended some elements of that. I know Kim participated, we had some other folks that participated. I'm attending here on the 17th at MSBA, an equity conference workshop. So it's not just the students, we want to connect with the students. Any outside trainers?
So we are working with MU also. They've done a fully responsive classroom study as well to come in and see what types of training that we need. And there are some outside organizations that we're working with to determine what's the best course of action for our district to come in and train, kind of a trainer model, so we can train some others that can get in buildings and help us with very responsive classrooms.
I guess that was the second part of my question is how will that training translate to inside of school buildings where the issue exists, more in the mindset of people? I have given personal feedback as a former employee who left because I was in a traumatic environment and did not any longer want to experience, but also be responsible for educating others. I was kind of given the onus to communicate on my own with someone who had a different mindset, and there was just not, I was not able to reach a meeting of the minds, and so I'm just wondering, how that's going to translate. I mean, we've talked about this citywide for a couple years now.
Absolutely.
And every time it comes up, I bring it up and say, okay, what's the next step?
Right.
So I'm just trying to keep up with everything that's going on and understand the process. So I've had some other conversations that I don't know how that gets around to the various people that need to get the information. But I'm
Right.
just, you know, always willing to give input
Right.
on my own experience, from real experience, and
Right.
not just, you know, not just a workshop or,
Absolutely.
you know, I mean, that's important, and I'm glad to hear that that's going on.
So back to the study with NU, they've actually done focus groups with families and students and actually went in classrooms and observed what the interaction is between students and staff. So we felt that we needed to have good data to determine where do we have needs to make sure our training matched our needs, because I agree with you, and I think everyone would agree in this room, to just say that we go through a training and check the box is not what we want to do. So we're really trying to be prescriptive in the training that we provide for our staff to make sure we're arming people with tools to meet the needs of our kids and understanding what those needs are, and then we can respond. So I agree with everything you're saying, and I assure you that what we're doing right now is trying to be very intentional about the training that we put our staff through to make sure it's meeting our needs.
And I will just maybe touch on the elements of our employees, if we have employees that leave the district, and I'll back up. Of having our staff better reflect our student population, from 4% of our staff to 7 to 9% of our staff being staff of color, is that we're making progress. Not where we need to be, but progress, and it's going to take time, and we know that. We have, I know one of our staff members is facilitating. I've had 14 individual meetings with community members or staff of color over the last 6 weeks of just trying to have a better understanding. We had some small groups that we have met with. We have more, it's going to be a Zoom, actually, Rod Chapel, as far as we're going to facilitate what that would look like with some community members. The date didn't work for them, but we will be doing that. So there's a lot of opportunities, but in your shoes, like, yeah, okay, that all sounds good. How's that translating to in our working environment? So that's a fair question. We're excited about our students to give that perspective. Students, I have 4 of my own in my house. I guess one that in college now, but they'll be honest, and what that looks like. And so we are really excited about that, because we're really not touched with, from the student perspective. We've had conversations, but not really sitting down and being intentional. Brenda's going to help facilitate that for us, and we're excited about that. So we'll have more updates of what that looks like. I just wanted to touch on with the students. There's a lot of different parts to it. I know Grow Your Own. That's something that we received a grant and to grow our own, and that's another part of that we're excited about that. That was in the spring, and then COVID hit, so that kind of hit the pause button on that, but we're excited here this fall and working with what that would look like. It's the old FTA, back when I was a kid, of Future Teachers of America, how we could partner with some of our existing students at JC and Capital City to potentially be sent. So I appreciate you sharing that, and a lot of different parts to it, and we can have some further conversations on that. So thank you. Anything else, any questions that you might have or ideas? Yeah, fire away, you're good.
I had some questions early on during the summer, because I have athletes
Yeah.
that are running in cross country.
Yes.
And tried to communicate with the staff about the guidelines as they were published.
Okay.
And just going by the communication that comes from you, which is contact your building principal, stay in contact with people.
Right.
I've not received a good response, in my opinion,
Okay.
to some of the communications that I've tried to establish, just to get clarity.
Okay.
And my first one was, what should my expectation be? Am I being realistic when I ask that if I see that there are students that are not following a published guideline, what should I expect? And one of the responses was, oh, it's really hard, oh, it's kind of a learning curve, and hopefully they'll get it in a couple of days, that type of thing. And then I moved on to the building AD, and then I moved on to, just kept going up the chain. But I've not really gotten very much of a response, and so I'm just wondering, is there something different that I should be? I get it that it's I get it.
Right.
There's a lot going on.
Right.
So that was one thing, and I guess the other thing is that there are some launch students who still are not, up to speed, and I know that that's, not really within the district, but Stronger Together kind of is starting to sound like Stronger Together as long as you're, with the plan of being in the classroom.
Right.
Because there's some students who are just still waiting, like even for a homeroom teacher.
Right.
Kind of just having to go it on their own and try to figure out how to maneuver in that virtual environment. So those are not my students, but just
Right.
as president of 2 PTOs, I'm, getting
Yeah.
a lot of feedback from folks,
Absolutely.
and they're wanting to know,
Absolutely.
are we part of Stronger Together too, or are we
Right.
kind of just out here on our own?
Right.
So those are the other two things. So I guess it's communication.
Okay.
Communication's a little tricky, even regular. So
Right.
this is different because we've got a whole lot of moving parts, and it's a lot to do.
Right.
I get it.
So we've experienced some of the things, some difficulties as well, and we've been working with launch. As a matter of fact, we have Dr. Scarborough and I have a list of things that we need to address with them. Again, there's a launch at JC School email address that can be used. We're talking about communications that are going to go out to families either today or next week or over the weekend sometime. So if you have specific issues, if you would just contact launch at JC Schools or see me after this, we can absolutely, we have it's not your, okay. just responding to your families, is that what you're, okay. I would encourage them to, there's the launch email, and they went from 20,000 to 90,000. So they're back up, and not that we aren't extremely busy as well, there's a launch at JC Schools email address that I think we can maybe troubleshoot some of the problems. There are certain things that because they are a vendor with us or a partner with us, we can't fix, but many things we can. So I would encourage them to use that launch at JC Schools address to address any questions or concerns they're having. And we'll vet those and see what we can take care of and what we need to pass on. But we are actively addressing those issues.
And Doc, we're really looking at, when you look at the number of students who are still without a teacher, like you said, it is less than 10%?
It is.
So 10% is not acceptable. But God bless, 90%.
Exactly.
So,
And we're actively moving some of those into, we have 7 teachers that are Jeff City Schools teachers that are teaching launch. And we are in the process of moving some students into those classrooms to make sure those classrooms are full and there's that many more students that don't have that issue of not having a teacher. So,
And all of our buildings will have observer accounts, so there'll be a point of contact in each building that is monitoring what students are doing with their lunch and making sure that they're making adequate progress and reaching out to them when they are having issues. And we have been working diligently. We have some people that are making contact with families where students haven't engaged at all since they started lunch. So if they're semi-engaged and haven't reached out for questions, they may not have gotten a call yet as they're working through all the pieces. So as Dawn mentioned, if people have questions and they haven't got their answers, to try that launch at JC Schools email and we can support you.
Right. So the second part of that was when you do reach out and you kind of don't get a response. Now, I haven't reached out about launch, and I'm pretty sure that specifically is a whole different area. But like I said, I have reached out since probably July or August, just about some of my concerns as it related to social distancing. And like I said, they're just.
So let's back up to the launch and then your other part there. So worst case scenario, the email that Dawn referenced, if you talk to folks, worst case scenario, have them call my office. And then I can direct to whether, when you talk to Dawn, you can send them, whether it's the email, whatever it is, to try to help our folks. And we can help facilitate, Stephanie can help. Because you're like, well, what is email? And just when in doubt, and then we'll help get them to the right spot. The first part you brought up as far as when you witness things that go against our priorities or social distancing. There are, as far as in our schools, classrooms, or if they're participating in athletics, if they're participating in cross country, and what that looks like. I mean, when folks are competing in a cross country race, We're not saying, well, I'm gonna pass that guy. Well, I can't stay, I got to stay within 6 feet. Well, no, you're trying to beat him, right? And I get that. So, we did have as a parent, as far as a waiver, that we realize there's some risk here, and that's not an excuse, but it is there are some different parts that are different in the classroom versus if I'm participating in an athletic event or activity cross country, for example. Is there a learning curve that you said there is? We need to make sure that we communicate and that we're consistent with that. And if you didn't hear, if when we're done here, Gary, head of our secondary, if you would touch base with her and get to try to get you the answers, and I apologize if that hasn't happened. It has been a learning curve. For all of us, that's no excuse. Thank you for helping us get there, and we'll help here because there are different parts of what it looks like. Because that's a question that we've been asked. How can you have a sporting tonight at Hannibal plays JC at Atkins Stadium tonight? How can you have a sporting event inside, but then the health department says that you can't have 25, or they recommend 25 or less in a Thursday night live, let's say. Well, we limited 20% of the venue accommodation as far as the number of people. We can control the number of people that go in there. They can't control it at Thursday night live or a parade, how many patrons come and trying to ensure a positive environment with that. So there are some different parts. There's no excuse. We got to make sure to communicate. Gary can help you get the answers there. In worst case scenario, if you don't get them, call my office and we'll try to get those farmed out.
I just have to say I'm fascinated and just amazed at all of the ways that everyone has come up with these innovative ideas to, address the situation. So, with that said, I'm, just interested in being a part of all of that and continuing to be a part of all of that, even though I do have a student who are both students who are virtual, but are also still a part of sports and are running with their full heart in this district. So, just want to continue to be a part of however I can be a part of things.
And I know that, and I appreciate that. Obviously, we still have some cracks that we need to get cinched up, but thank you for sharing that. Any other questions or comments on anything we'd like to touch on for any of us here today? Okay, we'll be around if anybody has any questions, comments. Thank you guys for coming. We are strong together. Have a great Friday, a great Labor Day weekend, and have a great day. Thank you.